Hello, guys, and welcome to the live. I'm your host, the Crime Dame, and tonight's subject, if you read the title, is Are Single Moms Under Attack? I got the idea for this story um, because there have been some recent attacks going on with single moms here in the Atlanta area. In the Atlanta area, and there's going to be three stories in particular that I want to go over tonight. And two of the stories actually happened in the same week. So one of the stories that I want to talk about is, let me pull up my notes here. This story happened a few months ago, actually back in May. And this was a single female mother of six, and she was expecting with her seventh child. And so I'm going to read a short snippet of the story. 11 Alive News has learned new details from police about the Sunday night shooting death in Union City of a mom of six who also had a baby on the way. Police said Thursday that while the mom, Deanna Fuller, 31, was on the ground just outside her apartment, dying along with her unborn child, two people who were there, her boyfriend and the boyfriend's father, failed to help her. But instead, they left the apartment and left to go to a party and left her alone there dying. Deanna Fuller lived in a ground floor apartment at a complex on Hightower Road in Union City, along with the father of her child, Fisher, the father of their unborn child, and Joshua's father, the unborn child's grandfather. Sunday night, all the children except Fuller's younger child were away. Just before 11 p.m., a man called 911. He stated that a young lady had been shot, and then the phone call disconnected. The police report says that the first responders found Deanna Fuller on the ground just outside the front door, apparently shot in the head, breathing but unresponsive. Police found a shell casing for a 9mm round on the grass nearby. Deanna's boyfriend and his father, along with the young child, were not there. Deanna and her unborn child died later at the hospital. Investigators who were at the apartment late Sunday night and into Monday morning, and the grandfather of Deanna's unborn child returned home and told police that he had been there earlier asleep in his room. And when he woke up, he went outside and discovered Miss Fuller on the porch. And he and Joshua and the youngest child left the location and went to a birthday party. Detective Allen said, police believe that one of the two men have may have been been actually the caller on the 911. The boyfriend's father is now facing charges. Deanna's infant and her other five children are now with relatives. So that's the first story. The second story I want to talk about, this story just happened last week. Actually, I think it was on Monday that this story happened. There was a young woman found on the side of the road who had been shot multiple times, and they showed the location on the news where her body was found, and the location was visible to the highway, and somebody just basically shot her, and I guess they threw her out of the vehicle right there for passengers to see. So this young lady's name, when they first found her, she had no identification on her, so they didn't know who she was. And the police sketch artist made a picture, a photograph of her, and they posted it on the news and said that if anyone knew who, if she looked familiar, for them to call the police. She had a very distinguished tattoo on her neck that said Rain, which is the name of one of her children. So this story, it starts off: a woman found dead with several gunshot wounds on Interstate 6675 on October the 3rd. So the woman has been identified, and she is 30-year-old Carmela Thomas. She was discovered by a passing motorist on the northbound side of the highway. So this is the second case that we're going to talk about. And I just want to get you all's idea, your thoughts on these different cases, because it seems like, I mean, I'm sure that this is not the first time that this has happened with a pregnant woman being shot, but there's a recurring theme with all three of these stories that I'm sure by the end that you all will figure out, what happened with these stories. So the third story that we're going to talk about, this also took place last week. And this, ironically, was in Georgia as well. Now, all of these stories and many of the cases that, have been going on, which it seems like an epidemic now, they didn't all happen in Georgia, but it just gave me the idea to do this story because, like I said, ironically, these stories did happen in Georgia. And I just thought it was, it just hit me very hard. And these are all young women, actually younger than my daughter. And I just, just can imagine what their families felt, just having to deal with these. And these are all single moms. So this story happened in Troup County. An arrest has been made following a shooting and a crash that left a pregnant woman and her unborn baby dead in Troup County. The Troup County Sheriff's Office identified the pregnant woman as 29-year-old Akila Ware. They said the suspect in the murder investigation was taken into custody in North Carolina. Other details about the arrest have not been released. Shot and killed a pregnant mom in Troup County. The first responders found. Previously, the sheriff's office said in a Facebook post, that on October 5th, they responded to Highway 18 near East Drummond Road for a crash. When they arrived, they found the driver of the car unresponsive. So they originally thought that it was just a car crash. Her vehicle was the only one involved in the crash, but they just assumed that she lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Deputies said that Ware was taken to the hospital where she died. It was discovered that the victim was pregnant and her unborn child had also died. From evidence gathered at the scene, deputies said it appears the shooting possibly happened near the intersection of Highway 18 and Whitesville Road. The crash and the shooting were under investigation. So after further get so far the police had only discovered that it was a silver Nissan vehicle, but they did not know the make of the vehicle. All they knew was that it was a silver Nissan. So after further investigation, they found that Akila's the father of her unborn child drove a silver Nissan Altima, a 2000 silver Nissan Altima. So this, I hate to call him a gentleman because he's not a gentleman at all. His name is Alonzo Dargan Jr., and he was the father of the unborn child. So he is an active duty person in the army, and that's where police picked him up. They, of course, they don't have any authority to pick anyone up on the army base, but the army soldiers assisted him in arresting him. And so now they're trying to bring him back to Georgia so that he can face murder charges. So if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that if someone is an active member of the service, I do believe that they also have to serve charges in the military as well. So that's where they stand so far with that case. So if you figured out so far that all of those have a recurring similar incident, and that person and that incident will be the fathers of these children, and they all were responsible for murdering the mothers. And the last case that I just went over, that one really reminded me a lot of the Ray Caruth incident, where he shot, where actually he was not the one who shot Sharika. He paid someone to do it. And he has now, as y'all know, that Ray Caruth is now out. And but the guy that was responsible for Sharika no longer being with us, he's still serving time in prison. So that story, reminded me so much of that. And, it just had me to wondering, like, what is going on in our community where the fathers of these mothers are, just eliminating these mothers. I mean, what's going on with that, and what we can maybe do to kind of get behind this situation, because it's just really terrible to me that that these things are happening. And I just wanted to know what you guys thought about that, and if you had any ideas on that, or if you heard about any of these stories. So I put the link to, if y'all want to chime in to let me know what you think about any of these. If you've heard of, first of all, if you've heard of any of these stories, and if you have, just let me know that you have heard of them, or if you haven't, what's your thoughts on these stories, and what do you think is the recurring, um, if you have any, if you have any thoughts on what we can do, um, to kind of get behind these stories. Hey JP, I dropped the link in the chat if you want to come up and say anything about these stories, if you heard the stories, or I can go over them again, and just give me your thoughts about what you think. You can't hear me?
Hello. I could hear you before, yes, but now I can't. Hello. I could hear you before, yes. I could hear you before, yes, but now I can't. Make sure I'm muted. Hello. I could hear you before, yes. Can you hear me? Okay. I cannot hear you. Yeah, when you had the earplugs out before, I could hear you. I think JP, hey JP, I think JP was saying that she was asking why maybe you weren't talking, but we could hear you. Let me put my earrings on. I'm gonna have to get a little bit of gloss. Ooh, Lord. You show as muted on my other go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. Everyone
Okay.
struggle streams.
So did you hear the details of any of those stories?
No, I was just kind of coming online and I saw your notification pop up and I did
Okay.
like pop in and it's like, hey, but I didn't hear the full story. So if
Okay,
you wouldn't mind, and I
so
know
let me
JP's here too. So
Hey
maybe
JP.
we'll both hear again at the same time. Yes,
Okay,
agreement.
so let me go back. Okay, so there's three stories in particular I was talking about.
Yes.
Um, and they all have like a recurring theme.
Mhm.
So two of these stories, they actually happened. Well, no, actually, all three of these stories happened in Georgia,
Okay.
ironically. So this is not just, I know people have a certain image of Georgia,
Hmm.
and I don't want people to think that this is just a Georgia problem.
Right.
But um, it just so happened these stories happened here in Georgia. So the first one, this story happened back in May.
Okay.
And this young lady, her name was Deanna Fuller, and all of these women are African American women.
Hmm.
And so Deanna Fuller, like I said, this happened in May, and she was a mother of six, and she had a baby on the way.
Okay.
And she was, I can't say the word, but
Yes.
by her, the father of her kid.
Yes.
So she lived with her, the father of her, the two youngest, because she had like a infant, and she was pregnant again with the seventh one. And she was, I guess, taken away from us
Hmm.
by the father of the last two kids. And she was, like I said, she was pregnant, and
Hmm.
they lived with his dad. Neither one of them worked, and they lived with the dad. So he shot her and
Hmm.
left her there at the apartment, and he and the dad went to a party.
So baby died
So
as well.
yes.
Mm.
So someone made an anonymous call to 911 saying that someone had been shot. So when
Hmm.
the police and the 911 got there, they found her there dying on the ground. So
Hmm.
they didn't know at first who made the call, but it turns out that he was the one that made the call. And the dad, he came back when the police were there,
Okay.
and they arrested him too. This, like I said, this happened in May.
Hmm.
The second case happened, I think, last Monday. And this young lady's name, her name was, let's see, let me make sure I'm getting her name right. So this young lady's name, this young lady's name was Cormella Thomas.
Okay.
So they found a pedestrian found her on the side of the road. She had been shot multiple times.
Okay.
And where they left her, it was very visible from people just driving by.
Hmm.
And they didn't know who she was at first because she didn't have any identification on her.
Right.
So the police sketch artist did a very good sketch of her, and she had a very distinguished tattoo on her neck
Okay.
that said Rain, which was the name of one of her children. And so they said if anybody identified her to notify police. So the next day, one of her friends identified her, and he went to the police and whatever, and they got the identification of who she is. She's a mother of three. The third young lady, her name is Akila Ware.
Mhm.
and she was a registered nurse, and she and the father of her child, I guess they got into some altercation, and they originally found her car crashed on the side of the road. So
Okay.
they assumed that only her car was involved. So they assumed that it was just a crash, that maybe she lost control and crashed the car. So after they, did further investigation, they noticed that her there were like bullet holes in the window,
Right.
and that someone had that's how she ended up losing control of the vehicle.
Okay.
So she also passed, and the baby that she was having, the baby passed as well. So all they knew was that witnesses saw that it was a silver Nissan, but they did not know the make of the vehicle.
Right.
So after further investigation, they discovered that the father of her child drove a silver Nissan 2000 silver Nissan Altima. And this guy, he's a current member of an active member of the army, and he was stationed in Fort Bragg.
Mhm.
And of course, they didn't have authority to go and arrest him at at his
On the
base.
base.
And
Oh wow.
so,
Okay.
yes. So the military, they helped arrest him, and now they're in the process of trying to extradite him back to Georgia.
Wow.
And not just that, but this guy is also married. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's an additional problem. So I don't know if that's why he did it, to
Mhm.
try to cover up the fact that, he didn't want his wife to find out. But so
Right.
that's where we are right now. But like I said, because these stories all happen to, occur in Georgia, it just had me thinking, what is going on with, these guys, you know, doing this to these they all were single moms,
Right.
and it was all the fathers of the children who did this to these women. So what is going on in our community? That, I mean, this is like something that years ago that you would never hear of, someone actually doing this to a pregnant woman. But
Right.
it's not like now, it's like no big deal for them to do this. And I'm just wondering what is going on in our community, or with our men, so to speak, that's causing them to do this. And I mean, that was just something that was just, bothering me. And I don't know if anyone else, thinks it's an issue or whatever, but it's like they're just callously, doing this to these women. And what is going on? I mean, so what are your thoughts on
Oh,
this?
it's a lot there. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, domestic violence. I think I had a police officer friend, and he told me that he felt that it was on the women who chose not to leave those relationships. And if
Hmm.
anything had really happened to them, then it would be their fault because they didn't leave. And he and I debated about that. I was like, when you are in that kind of situation, you feel, and the man, and it's both ways for women, but I'm only going to speak from this perspective, that they convince you that no one else will want you, and they show their love by being really passionate, which means aggressive to them, and they don't understand that that is not what love is. And if I'm sure in at least one or two of those cases that you just stated, that other people knew that things were going on. It's not something that
Yeah.
you can hide. You can, if there's bruises, or even if your personality's changed, or you act one way around that person and then another way not around that person, they're clear signs or indications that there is a problem. And I feel we've become so siloed where it's not my problem, it's not my responsibility. They didn't speak up, I want to mind my own business. And so people have become that way, even if it's your family members. Like, if they say no, I'm good, don't bother me, it's none of your business, people are like, okay, I'm going to stay out of it. I think that's where a lot of it comes from, because we can see that there's a problem, but no one takes action. And sometimes when you're in it, it's uh, you're embarrassed, or you don't want people to know, or there's a sense of weakness because you're allowing those things to happen to you, quote
Yeah.
unquote. So I mean, it's we spoke about this earlier, forgotten whose stream we're talking about, but it really does take the community to speak up and say, you are safe. I know that something's not right. How are you doing? And trying to get to the root of it in a respectful way that doesn't make them kind of, retreat. But just saying, I'm here when you're ready to talk with me. And whatever I can do, you're safe and you'll be good. And that takes community, that takes noticing and reaching out.
Yeah. And I know in the case with the young lady Deanna Fuller, her
Mhm.
sister said that that once when she saw her, she did have some bruises on her head, and she
Yes.
asked her, what's going on with those bruises, and she said, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, I'm okay." I mean,
Right.
and I think that's what a lot of women, well, not necessarily just women, but men as well, who are going through abuse, they say that, and sometimes that they feel like it's going to get, I don't know if they feel like it's going to get better,
Right. Right.
and
Or they go
sometimes
into it where like things happen, like it's smooth, like they had a good day.
yeah,
So maybe that's a sign that they're not going to hit me or verbally, verbal and emotional abuse is just as impactful.
yes,
Like they're not going to yell at me or scream at me in front of my children or, intimidate me
yeah,
this time or tomorrow. It was a good day because he didn't yell at me. So
hmm,
we're making progress. Like, no,
yeah,
no.
yeah. I mean, and I'm just kind of baffled as to what we can do about it, because like I said before, you know even, I guess you can say, if they were abused, sometimes the guys, they didn't go that far to to do what they did, especially
Mhm.
with them expecting another baby.
Right.
It's like I can't figure this out. So I wish we had some guys up here, which I don't know if they could, if they would have an answer for it either. But
Mhm.
it's just something that's just so baffling to me, because you're saying to yourself, like, this woman is carrying a baby. What would make you, do
Better.
that? That's crazy. That's so crazy to me.
Better.
That's
I
so
think
crazy to
too,
me.
it's like people are so stressed out these days and
Hmm.
they don't seek the proper attention. They go to, having a good time, distracting
Yeah.
themselves by, drugs and alcohol oftentimes, or that they can deal with it and the stress will get to them and they snap and things like that
Mhm.
happen. I'm sure. I mean, he called the police, right? So
Yeah.
he had
Yeah.
some remorse. Like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, what did I do? If you have anger problems, if you snap easily, your threshold's super short, then you have to seek help. And
Yeah.
if you see your family member, your husband or wife or anyone behaving that way with their relationships, I mean, we have to do a better job of speaking up and saying, you are behaving badly,
Yes.
and you need help, and kind of like staying as best we can on them until they do, because they're going to hurt someone that they love.
Yeah. And with the last case, I'm assuming he did that because he didn't want his wife to find out. But I mean, you were all the way in the wrong in the first place, because you were, you know, involved with her when you have a whole wife, and now
That's
you're
right.
involved with someone else. So you are already wrong, and that does not, you know, eliminate the problem,
Hmm.
because now you have another problem. Now you're going to
Right.
be going away for the rest of your life. So whatever he had going on with his wife and his family there, now there's two families that's going to be negatively affected by what you did, because you made a bad decision.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
it's
even that, and then like speak to that, like getting into a relationship with someone, when you're married, that's its own thing. And then the consequences of that, you there where there's that reward, there's a risk. You want to have that extra person that you can go to when you're having a stressful day and your wife's driving you crazy, so you step out. But there's consequences to that, and he's like, I'm not going to face those consequences again. That's a problem. That's a triple layer problem right
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. And I think not speaking, like, since he was an active member of the
Mm-hmm.
military,
Right.
do you know, I'm sure that he's going to be, come up with some charges from the military as well for
Yeah,
this, you
I don't
think?
know. I don't know. I don't know if JP's in because I know her. She's familiar with the military families. I don't know. Um,
Mm.
I don't know. Well, you said that they had to, or involve the military to
Yeah,
even
because he went after
extract them
after
from
he
the
did that,
base.
he went back to what is it, Fort Bragg in North Carolina, South
Yes,
Carolina?
I
I
believe
think it's
so.
in North
North
Carolina.
Carolina.
And he went back to North Carolina, and because he was, living in, so they had a long distance relationship.
Oh my
And
goodness.
after he did that, he went back to North Carolina, and that's where they ended up. They found the vehicle there, and they had, of course, had to get the military's assistance in order for them to, to try to charge him. So
Right, right.
um, I don't know if he's going to actually have to face charges with them as well. So
Yeah,
that's
here
interesting.
actually, where in Florida, there is a domestic violence shelter,
Hmm.
and I participate as one of their volunteers, and I understand it's like uprooting the feeling of I'm embarrassed that I'm in this position.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I just wanted to kind of go away and kind of keep that man or that woman, both ways, kind of let me just tiptoe and do all the things that will not upset that person so that they do not, react to me in a negative way. And
Yeah.
we can't control other people, and we can't when we're responsible for other children and responsible for pets. I mean, there were situations where women would not even leave their home because they feared what would happen to just their dog being left behind,
Yeah.
um, by the dad, like by the parent, whomever. So the fear is great. Like they would feel guilty that if they left, who would suffer along with her? Who would suffer?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, look who's in here. What the funk?
What the fuck?
What the funk? You want to come up and say something? I am very interested to hear what you would have to say. Let me drop
Yeah,
the link in here to hear
leeway.
what you have to say.
Parent needs keyword. You're right. He says the pandemic has shown most are better alone. I mean, it's something to be said.
Yeah.
And you had to learn to be alone. And it's like, okay, I can
Exactly.
live
I mean,
okay
because
with
with the
this.
pandemic, I mean, if you were already having issues
Hmm.
with these people, and now you are like forced to be together
Or forced to
more
be
than normal.
isolated
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
the
you
other
couldn't
way.
go anywhere. You just had to
Mhm.
be there and deal with that problem with that person. And you
Right,
couldn't go anywhere to get away from it.
right.
So that was another issue as
Hmm.
well.
Even the situation you were talking about with people who may have a first life, or have side lives with
Hmm.
different relationships. I mean, I think the pandemic has shown too, because they could not intermingle, they couldn't
Yeah.
connect, they had to stay isolated to their home. In the opposite fashion, maybe those men or women said, you know what, I've been away from that person, I'm better off without that person. I mean, how many
Hmm.
stories of those where it would work out, where I don't want to be with that person anymore,
Yeah.
versus we worked so well together, living together. The opposite is true. Like
Yeah.
I realize I don't want to be with that person.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's good
because we
too.
had there were last, just last year alone, there are a lot of couples, even celebrity couples, who were together for a long time, and they were like, okay, you know what, this seeing you every day, and you're not on the road for 6 months, and we
Mm-hmm.
see each other on the weekends. This is just too much for me. I don't.
Right.
It seems like I don't love you as much as I thought I
I
did.
thought that's
Yeah, so
right.
we had a lot of that going on. We had a
I'm
lot
sure.
of that going on. Hmm.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on
Thank
today
you so
and
much for
and
having me.
supporting me and
Absolutely.
giving your thoughts and opinions on this. I just thought that I'm like, okay, especially with we having those cases twice in one week. I'm like, wait a minute now. There's something going on here, and I, we need to like come up with some kind of solution as to what's going on, because we're losing too many. And the other problem that I thought of at the kind of like at the last minute, now these women are gone,
Right.
and they lost the babies that they were carrying, but they
Yes.
also had kids that now their family members are going to have to take care of, and
Yes.
sometimes the kids end up being split up. And, if maybe one family member can't take all the kids, they can only take one or two.
Hmm.
So the kids end up splitting up. So that causes a whole nother issue.
Yeah, that's the next generation that they're all
Yeah.
suffer. I'm sure
Yeah.
that too, that a lot of, how many of them get counseling from
Hmm.
their mother and their dad doing something really bad, and then
Yeah.
their mother not existing anymore. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the trauma that's left there, and it's just like, over time you'll get over it. No, they really need to seek counseling, and probably for the rest of their lives for a situation like that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, but I appreciate you having me on.
But
I wanted
thank
to
you
pop
so
in and talk
much. Thank you
some
so
part to
much. I
you.
really appreciate it. I guess I was trying to see if some other people were going to come in and chime in. I guess Want the Funk, he's always on your lives. He's always
He's in
relaxing.
Germany, so you never
Oh,
know what
is
he's
he?
up to. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Did he move again when he got into
I know.
he said on one of your lives that, "Oh, I just moved to another state."
He's so nutty. Maybe not
Yeah.
not yet anyway, not yet. No plans.
But thank you so much, Kelly, for
Thank
coming
you for
on.
having me. Thank you.
Tomorrow I also want to go live. I want to talk about
Mhm.
the missing white woman syndrome. So I want to kind of
That's
talk
a good
about that
topic
too
in
as well.
comparison
Yeah,
to. Okay.
exactly. We have
Mhm.
so many women that are missing,
Yes.
and of course, that we don't get the coverage that everybody else
Yes.
gets.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I like to discuss that too. So if you're not doing
Good.
anything tomorrow
Yeah.
night,
What
I know,
time? What time are you doing it?
probably the same
You know?
time, 8 o'clock tomorrow.
8.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I should be around. I'll pop in for sure.
okay, all right. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay. You
all
have a
right.
good
Good
night.
night.
Good
Good
night.
night. So guys, if you watch the replay, just leave a comment and like and subscribe. And once again, this has been a subject that I thought was very, I don't know any of these young ladies, but I just thought the subject was something that was really touching to me, to my heart. Because, like I said, these young women, they were all younger than my daughter. And, being a mother and a daughter myself, I just thought it was just something that was just really, really disturbing to me. So if you watch the replay, just, like and comment. And thank you for watching.